The NPA drops charges against Dumisani Khumalo, while the finance minister shoots down the idea of a pay bonanza at NSFAS. And former PRASA state capturer Lucky Montana loses some of his ill-gotten assets. Welcome to the Political Insider. This episode is brought to us by our partners at Trade Nation. If you want to trade financial instruments, local, foreign currencies, shares, indices, anything that you fancy, Trade Nation is the platform for you to trade. Visit them at tradenation.com. See if that is the platform for you to trade financial markets. So remember, cast your mind back to June 2025. When, out of the blue, crime intelligence head Dumisani Khumalo and 6 other officers were arrested on trumped-up charges of fraud and corruption, which were brought to them compliments of IDAC. These actions of IDAC to arrest these people was followed 1 month later by Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi calling his famous press conference, announcing that the country was being held hostage by crime syndicates working together with crooked law enforcement and captured politicians. So the one led to the other. What had happened? Earlier in the year, the end of 2024, going into 2025, there were a slew of arrests by Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi working on the intelligence gathered by Dumisani Khumalo and his crime intelligence team that led directly to the arrests of people like Katiso Molefe and Kat Matlala. Suddenly, the people that were instrumental in those arrests were being arrested themselves. After Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's press conference, the president, finally having to take some action, established the Madlanga Commission, and we know what followed from that. Everything that has occupied the South African conversation for the best part of the past year has been because of those actions. It was the most visible action of what Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi was talking about. So now National Prosecuting Authority head Andy Mothibi has confirmed that these charges that were being brought against Khumalo and others have been provisionally withdrawn. Why is this significant? Well, it's significant, and here we are starting to draw the picture that I suppose Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi was trying to draw at his press conference, because for the past 18 months, there's been a national arm wrestle between Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi and his allies trying to apprehend and prosecute very senior criminal syndicate heads who have done a whole host of things, and to stop their industrial strength corruption, which was being helped by people within law enforcement and in some cases within politics. Now, those actions, the actions of Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi and his team, were being challenged by some key players who went out of their way to try and stop them from doing their jobs. And these were institutions and people that were very happy with the arrangement as it was at the end of 2024, where criminals could basically do what they liked, and some of the numbers were eye-watering. You could get to steal apprehended narcotics and distribute them. And then if you didn't like the people distributing them, you get to shoot the DJ. And then nobody would investigate those crimes. And if you didn't like your girlfriend, you got to shoot your girlfriend. And it was nobody could ever finalize those investigations. You got to steal valuable state resources from critical hospitals, Tembisa Hospital and all that. You could kill the whistleblowers, and the police don't do anything about these cases. That was not enough. The state would reward you, not just the state, but the South African Police Service would reward you with massive tenders worth hundreds of millions of rands. So it was quite a nice gig. If you were on that train, why would you want it to stop? So what happened? Who were the people that were so apparent, these forces that have been trying to keep that status quo going? The picture has become clearer as to who the players were. Number one, we have the crime syndicate leaders. Hangwani Morgan Malmela, he who cannot be named or touched. the guy who we know more about his cars than we know about him, right? Everyone else gets arrested and gets put in front of the commission, but not Maumela. But we know that he heads up, he's an integral part in the crime syndicates. Katiso Malefe, we know, even though he got bail from a dodgy judge, the point is that he's a senior player in the crime syndicates of South Africa. Kat Matlala, the poor guy, the only guy who's actually behind bars, part of the syndicate, as well as Suleiman Karim. Although Suleiman Karim came with the added value of also being a senior member of the ANC, where he holds the role as Treasurer General in the Northwest Province. So he was not only a criminal, but a political insider. One could say that many in the ANC fill that dual role. So that was the criminals, the outright criminals. Then we had crooked policemen running key organizations within law enforcement. We have a dodgy police commissioner, currently suspended, Fani Masemola, seemed to be perfectly happy with the setup the way it was. We had Gauteng Hawkshead, Shadrach Sabia. He was a guy who, when he heard that arrests were being made of these criminals, tried to stop those arrests, even got a helicopter in a place where the policemen don't have cars to drive in. Somehow he found a helicopter to try and buzz the scene. He had people pitch up to try and stop those arrests. So we are starting to get a picture of who these people were within the police that were helping. Then we have other people like Feroz Khan, crime intelligence in SAPS, who seems to be almost a member of a crime syndicate or running his own crime syndicate as it is. And then you have IDAC, Andrea Johnson and her team, a name that's we're starting to hear more of, in addition to Andrea Johnson, Dylan Perumal. These were people that went out there to do everything in their power to stop the arrest of criminals, to stop anybody interrupting what was clearly a well-oiled operation. There were smaller players like Julius Mkhwanazi running his own little thing in Ekurhuleni. A whole host of generals and brigadiers who were bit part players and, were assisting in this whole crime spree. It's hard to imagine that they had any time left to do any police work. Well, scrap that, because I don't think they were even trying to do any police work. And holding this together were a sprinkling of politicians who would try and help by using their political influence to make sure that a few decisions went their way. Police Minister Senzo Mchunu trying to disband the PKTT before they could do any more law enforcement, God forbid. Then we had some MPs that were doing the bidding for the criminals. We've heard about Fadil Adams. We've heard about Julius Malema. At key times, performing key functions that would help criminal syndicates. And then local level politicians, Imogen Mashazi in Ekurhuleni, Gareth Nisi in the city of Tshwane. These were people that were all there playing their role. So back to the dropping of these charges by Andy Matibi. He seems to be doing yeoman work in the short time that he has been there to try and clean up the National Prosecuting Authority. But we must remember, the guy is past the age that he should have been to have been appointed to the position. One can only wonder why it took so long to appoint him. But he'll only be in that position for 2 years. And the real burning question is who succeeds him, and will his successor be as committed to fighting crime as Andy Matibi is? Let's not forget that Andy Matibi's 2 immediate predecessors do not come with a great track record. We had Sean the Sheep Abrams, who was actually actively assisting the State Capture Project back in the Zuma days. And we all got very excited when Shamila Batoy succeeded him as National Director of Public Prosecutions. Instead, she may not have run interference, but she did absolutely nothing to fight crime in the years that she sat in that role and couldn't wait for the exit door. So the predecessors of Andy Matibi, as head of crime fighting in this country, did nothing. So Matibi is responding directly by withdrawing these charges directly to Andrea Johnson's awful testimony at the Madlanga Commission, in which she has implicated IDAC as being little more than a criminal facilitation agency. And this left Mothibi with little option but to withdraw these spurious charges. Remember, many of them are the ones that sort of ended up going with, because they threw a whole lot of stuff against the wall to see what would stick, was the appointment of the young Brigadier Daneo Makwela, who was a specialist in her field, by saying she was not qualified, and the most laughable allegation that at some point in time she was going to commit a crime. And that's how good IDAC were, that they could see into the future. And the purchase of a hotel to be used as the Political Killings Task Team's head office in Gauteng. These issues create a problem for the National Prosecuting Authority, because Makwela has already gone the legal route. Her lawyers are threatening charges, and we may see in the National Prosecuting Authority, they continue with this court case, could be in to pay damages. So there's a lot going on, but it seems like, as with the succession for Mothibi, that we've got to start doing some obvious things. You know, it seems obvious to most of us that Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi should be the police commissioner, if not the minister of police, somebody who is committed to fighting crime. But it's not so obvious as to who should be the next national director of public prosecutions. And this is a question that South Africans should get very invested in, because this position is critical. If we get another person sitting on their hands like Shamila Batoy, or another person actually helping criminals like Shaun Abrahams, this could be very bad for the country. And that tactic has been used by presidents for nearly 30 years so that they could manipulate the criminal justice system. It is time that we understand that this poor choice of National Director of Public Prosecution gave us Jacob Zuma State Capture 1.0, followed by Cyril Ramaphosa State Capture 2.0. The successor to Andy Mothibi should be the most important question, and it would be great if those successors would start emerging. That is going to be the most crucial position to be filled in South Africa. Before we continue, I'd just like to thank you for subscribing to The Political Insider. This channel is growing so nicely, it's getting out to more people. If you haven't subscribed yet, just hit the button below. It costs you nothing, and we'll get this story out to more people. Right, so if South Africa is looking for heroes, and they are starting to emerge, as we said, we've seen Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi being the hero in police. We are seeing Andy Mothibi as a hero in the National Prosecuting Authority. But one of the people who's probably fighting the hardest to keep some semblance of control over the comrades has been our Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana. Now he has stepped in to try and stop the Minister of Higher Education, Buti Manamela, from paying the NSFAS administrator a salary package of 11 million rand for 2 years of work. The Minister of Higher Education, Buti Manamela, must be the world's biggest capitalist communist. He has no peer. He hired, in May of this year, a person by the name of Professor Hlongwane Matabula. This was after he had placed NSFAS under administration. Now, I can't believe that with people like Buti Manamela in cabinet that understand business so well, that we aren't an economic miracle, because he clearly understands capitalism, by paying his mates a lot of money. He knows the free market better than most, and as a minister, he gets to determine the financial compensation for an administrator. The other positions, they have salary bands. Here, it's up to the minister's discretion. So needless to say, he dissolves the board of NSFAS, appoints an administrator, and pays him whatever he likes. And in this case, it's 5.5 million rand a year. Now, the finance minister has said on several occasions that NSFAS should be shut down. And it's hard to argue against this obvious decision. The question is, why does NSFAS exist? And we've discussed this many times on the show. It is just a function that never used to exist. It's costing the country a fortune. But listen to this. We are spending 700 million rand on the administration of NSFAS. not on paying stuff out. And if this was just paid to students, we could fund the education of another 9,000 students. Instead, we spend it on administrators. This is before we deal with the fact that they occupy 6-star offices in the Cape Town waterfront and all of the other costs that are associated with that kind of, office rental. Now, the proposed annual salary of the NSFAS administrator must be compared, just to give it some kind of scale, with the president's annual salary of 3.5 million rand. This person is earning 2 million rand more than the president of the whole country. It is little wonder that our poor president had to sell imaginary cattle and that he can't afford a safe to keep all the cash that he's making out of selling no cattle. To top it all, remember that the ANC rewards failure. And this self-same Professor Klengani Matabula was suspended from SARS, where he had worked for 10 years. He was suspended there. He breached his duties as a senior manager, where he disclosed private data. He gave emails to people that shouldn't have got them. He also interfered, most alarmingly, with an investigation into the illicit tobacco trade. And he approved steps that led to the suspension of disciplinary proceedings of SARS investigators. This was based on trumped-up charges. So he tried to meddle in an investigation, and I wonder why. Right? All in all, Matabula seems to be exactly the appropriate cadre to deploy into this position. In the ANC, you never fail. You just get promoted. And there is a case of somebody else getting promoted. But at least there seems to be work being done. And now we have heard that the Special Investigative Unit, the SIU, has been granted an interim preservation order to freeze 2 properties that were illegally obtained by former Prasa boss Lucky Montana. Right? They have evidence that Montana's purchase of these properties were bankrolled by a Prasa contractor when Montana was CEO in the glory days of state capture. This is good news, even if it did take 11 years to get these preservation orders, but the wheels of justice do not move too quickly in South Africa. The 2 properties in question, a house in the swanky neighborhood of Waterkloof in Pretoria, which was bankrolled with funds diverted from a contract awarded to Siangana Technologies. They received a 5.6 billion rand integrated security access management system for Prasa. In 2018, Lucky Montana bought a second property in Hurlingham in Sandton for 13.5 million rand. Once again, Siangana helped through their holding company, TMM Holdings, who helped him with 2 million rand. The remaining 11.5 million rand came from a mysterious entity, also owned by TMM, called Midtown Brace, I should say, which was incorporated in Botswana, not even in South Africa. Now, until 2025, Lucky Montana did find a job after he had been fired at Prasa. He was a member of parliament, where they call each other honorable member. He was an honorable member of parliament for Mkhonto weSizwe party. It seems like Mkhonto weSizwe is the home of great financial management. So it is good news that the SIU has finally been granted an order to get some money back from Lucky Montana. But there's another financial issue that I want to bring to your attention, and it revolves around the Mkhonto weSizwe party. Now, it should not come as a surprise to anybody that they have financial problems. They seem to have changed their Secretary General and their Treasurer General every 5 minutes. We understand when they fired their former Treasurer General, Mpiyake Limba, they were reported to be 28 million rand in debt. Remember, Limba was fired and replaced by Brian Molefe, the former Eskom CEO and regular client of the Saxon World Shebeen. But this didn't seem to solve their financial problems. Now it seems they have a new accounting officer, and that person has the name of one Jacob Zuma. The MK party president appointed himself as the party's accounting officer. His first step was to freeze the party's bank accounts and to revoke all signing authority on the party's bank account. Only he can work with the money. Now, Jacob Zuma has got a long history of financial woes, and putting him in charge of the party's finances, what could possibly go wrong? Let's meet in the comment section below. Tell us what you think on any of these stories, and we will see you again on the Political Insider.